Hello, welcome to Focus on Fantasy Romance, episode number 64, a podcast where we discuss books, genre, industry, and our geeky lives. I'm your host, Elle Klaus.
I'm ARD Clerk.
I'm Paulina Woods.
Electra Gatas.
And today we're doing a little bit different. We're going to start with news like we normally do. My news is that I'm still writing. The Unicorn's Heart, I think, is over 30,000 words, which is novella length, but I've got at least half the book to finish to get to the end of the story. But slow but steady. My classes are going slow but steady. Everything is slow but steady. Amy?
Let's see. I just published the first book in my Shadowlight Shifters series, which is Victorian shifter romance. So that is out. It's called Dogs of War. Look it up if you like neo-Victorian gothic mystery, romance, suspense type stories. It'll be the first in a series of 4 novels, maybe 1 novella. I'm still unsure about that, but at least 4 novels that go along with the Warwick siblings. So I got that going on. Takamo Universe has picked up with publishing again, so I'm starting book 3 in the Aeon Project, which is my cyborgs. Super sweet, super sexy cyborgs. Book 2 should come out when they get their publishing game together, and then I should have book 3 done, so hopefully in quick succession, and then there'll be 2 more books in that series to come along. Posted on my blog a couple times about what I plan to do going forward. If anybody has any questions or ideas or things in particular that they want, pop over to the blog, leave me a comment, let me know. It's called Progress Update. So I do plan to do some more in the Alchemist Kiss world. People have been asking me. Yes, if you have not seen The Last of Icarus Kane, he will return along with all of his fun and exciting pals. So that's not over. And I guess that's about it. I do have a novella coming out, hopefully toward maybe middle to end of this month. It is in the Keyholder series, which Between is the first book. Second book is called Wayward, and it's Uriel's story. So got that going on, and that's about it. I'll share the cover for that. Got You Covered Designs did for me. I'll share that on my Facebook page if anybody wants to see. Paulina?
Well, right now I'm just working on Bethany's Salvation, which is going to be a reverse harem story. It should be up for pre-order in about 3 or 4 days and coming out either beginning of April or end of March. It matters how fast the edits get done on it. Then I'm going to be moving on to book 4 of my Witches series because my ass needs to get going on there. And that's it. Electra?
I'm currently working on a contemporary romance. It's called Generational Sins. It's set in Las Vegas, and just plugging away on that. Actually, I'm doing really good. I have everything mapped out, and I'm just now here in the next couple weeks, and as hockey is done for our family, I will be writing. So it's pretty much it for me.
Well, we are writers, so writing is something good that we should be doing. So that kind of brings me back to the topic of this format for this episode. I have this game called Once Upon a Time, and it's a card game, and it's designed for people to make up a story while they play the game. And we decided to draw 3 cards and then all write a story based on the same 3 cards. I thought it'd be a fun exercise to see how we take the same information and process it and come up with something different. Also, it will give the listeners kind of a window into our writing style. So we all wrote a story with these 3 elements. So the 3 cards that we drew were, first card was 2 people fall in love. The second card was old man. And the third card said they ate it at the feast and it was delicious. So we're not just going to say this is so and so's story, here it is. Amy's going to read them all, and then we're going to have to guess which person wrote which story. So these are completely random. Amy, are you ready?
I am ready.
Okay.
Okay, we'll start with the first story. I chose these at random. I don't know. I just picked them, so. The old man glanced at the clock. It was almost time. He carefully set the last item, a tiny plate made from gold, on his miniature table. His son had called him silly for borrowing his granddaughter's doll furniture, but he didn't care. Today he would be instrumental in bringing together two people who missed each other by mere minutes in the last few months. He sat down on his comfortable chair and picked up his book, so he looked busy. He had a clear view of the window where he'd laid out a feast fit for a king, only on a tiny scale. The little man showed first, flitting through on his fairy wings. He would worry the snapdragons and honeysuckle and be on his way, but today there was something. The fairy man stepped at the table and stuck his nose into the small pitcher of wine. The old man peered over the pages of his book and waited, the fairy man taking a tiny biscuit and taking a bite. The small creature wore an acorn cap on his head, and his clothes looked like leaves from an autumn day. Dunking his biscuit into the honey, the fairy man sat down. Good, the old man thought. The longer he stayed, the more likely she would appear. The lady fairy preferred the dew from the roses and lilacs. He'd taken great pains to time their meeting, moving their preferred flowers closer and closer together in the garden outside. Now his study window had the perfect view. The fairy lady flitted in, light as a breeze, but halted at the scene he'd laid out. He knew as soon as she saw the fairy man and the lady fairy that he had to get them to meet. The little man swallowed his bit of biscuit and straightened. The lady fairy waved in greeting, but looked skittish. She might flee at any moment. The old man gripped hard the edges of his book. He'd waited for this moment for months. They finally met. The two circled each other, hovering just above the floor of the windowsill, oblivious for the moment to the feast before them. If they spoke to one another, he couldn't hear, but their heads nodded and their hands motioned. Finally they landed, and the fairy man pulled out the doll chair for the lady. She sat down, her feathery dress floofing about her. He sat beside her, and they ate the feast before them. The old man closed his book and slowly inched out of the study. He'd done what he set out to do, got his two fairy friends to meet. By the looks of it, they enjoyed their feast and each other's company very much. It might be the start of something beautiful, which started with a chance, delicious feast. Okay, so that was flash fiction number 1. An old man set up a date for two fairies. All right, here's flash fiction number 2. Priscilla picked at the roast pig in front of her and tried not to make eye contact with her mother. This was supposed to be a day of rejoicing as her husband was introduced, but all she could think of was her newest unicorn. She had only enough time to make sure she was comfortable and well fed before her maidservants had come and dragged her into the house to get dressed. Priscilla, stop picking at your food and eat, her mother's shrill voice pierced her ears. I don't want your husband to think you're weak. Yes, mother. Priscilla lifted a chunk of meat to her mouth and was about to place it on her tongue when the door to the dining hall opened and the chilly winter air rushed in. Lord and lady, the door servant announced, may I present to you Lord Wispy from Riverdale. Priscilla placed her fork onto her plate and tried to adapt a serene look. She had never seen her husband, but she did hope he wasn't ugly to look upon and would allow her to keep her unicorns. It wouldn't do to glare at him the very first time they saw each other. The servant stepped to the side and a hunched-over figure hobbled into the room. Priscilla tried to stop the gasp that escaped her mouth as she prayed this was not her husband. He was an old man who had not long left in this world. Her eyes sought her mother, but for once her mother did not meet her eyes. Ma? Silence, daughter, her father hissed. Our guests have arrived. He stood and gestured for the old man to take a seat to his right. Lord Wispy, how good it is to see you again after all these years. The pleasure is all mine. Lord Wispy's voice was strong for an old man with just a hint of an accent from the high country. He shuffled forward and carefully situated himself on the bench. The servants placed a plate and goblet in front of him before everyone resumed eating. Is this lovely lady to be my blushing bride? Lord, I would like you to meet my daughter Priscilla. Priscilla could feel the smile on her face freeze as she struggled not to glare at her father. He would marry her to such an old man? Her life would be full of nursemaid duties, and to have sex with him was beyond what she could do. Would he smell of old man and decay? Lord, she said before the silence could draw up too long, it's a pleasure to meet you. The rest of the dinner, her father and Lord Wispy finished the negotiations for her hand, and when dessert had been cleared, the priest was called for. Not long after that, she was bundled up and handed into a beautiful carriage, and she watched her family home disappear. Her family never heard from her again, but when the wind blows on cold winter nights, some say you can hear her cries reaching towards the heavens. Okay. One more. Well, there's two more, but this is another one. Nothing lifted Aphrodite's spirit more than meddling in love. A tall, handsome, dark-haired man in a tux glanced at the beautiful brunette across the ballroom. The woman's shy smile lit the coals of desire in the man's eyes. It would be a great injustice to the young couple if he let the man's date, a drumstick of a woman attached to his hip, prevent true love from happening. After all, he was the god of love, beauty, pleasure, and procreation, not a goddess as the world believed. He glanced at the clock, 10 minutes until dusk, before his power became full strength. He waved his hands over a silver tray filled with strawberries. Heating things up, he added a touch of aphrodisiac, named after himself, of course. Aphrodite walked over to the man and flinched at the beak on his date's face. Was it possible for a chicken to be reincarnated into a human? He handed the man the tray and perplexed eyes stared back. Did he really have to do everything? Nothing like a whisper of persuasion to get things moving. Go to her, Aphrodite said. Before the man whisked away, his date grabbed a berry. Her gaze traveled over Aphrodite's impressive muscular form and his chiseled face. I'd like to bite something else, she said seductively. A shiver of disgust ran down Aphrodite's spine. Oh, the things he did for love. He forced his most charming smile, something he rarely gifted to any mortal, but true love was worth the sacrifice. She tilted her head and moaned. No doubt it was due to being in front of the most handsome god. Shall we? He offered his arm, letting the chicken drag him away from the ballroom. It took him longer than he'd expected to ditch the woman in a maintenance closet. She'd been unable to keep her hands to herself. But he had that effect on women, and he couldn't blame her. He tamed his golden mane before re-entering the ball. His stomach tightened as he stared in disbelief. Clothes littered the ballroom. The guests were fanning themselves and guzzling down anything cool to drink. He groaned. The strawberries. An old man stood next to him. I'm afraid you're too late. They're all gone, the withered figure answered. They ate them during the feast, and they were quite delicious. The disguise of an old man couldn't hide the power swirling through Hera's blue eyes. How? He made sure it was still light when his powers would be less intense. The old man pointed to the wall. Guess someone forgot to change the batteries in the clock. Next time, hand the man 2 drinks. He snorted as if the heart-shaped fruit was a symbol of love. But there was a bigger problem. Zeus is going to strike me dead with his thunderbolt, he whined. My dear boy Aphrodite, I'm willing to make all of this go away. Sad, aged eyes stared back at him. What's it going to cost me, Hera? He asked. The smile on Hera's wrinkled face told Aphrodite the price was great. Ooh, what's Aphrodite going to have to pay? Pay up! All right, one more. See if I can. Here we go. The land of Pop Switch rejoiced when their prince announced his upcoming nuptials. He was nearing 20, and the people had begun to worry that their heir would never marry. The villages surrounding the castle set up a festival in celebration of the wedding. A white cow was slaughtered especially for the feast, and the prince himself had promised to attend the midnight toast with his new fiancée. Word of the prince's visit spread far and wide, and people were coming from all over to join in the festivities. The prince's guards were worried for his safety, and wanted to limit his interaction with the people as much as possible. Determined to be the best ruler he could be, the prince naysayed the idea and chose to walk amongst his subjects as one of them. He knew they would be surprised when they realized his choice for a mate was a woman, was not a woman as anticipated, but a man of his own age named Prince Davin of the neighboring kingdom of Rusk. His people were not opposed to same-sex couplings, but it was unusual for the ruling class to publicly announce a joining in this manner. There would be no children, and he would need to name an heir from outside his own bloodline as his successor. Despite the obstacles, the prince knew that Davin was the perfect mate for him, and that together they could rule the kingdom honestly and justly. The night of the festival arrived, and the prince and Davin dressed in their finest clothes. The prince made sure the wagons were loaded with gifts for the village children, and they set out with their guards to the village. On the road, they passed an old man who was nearly thrown into the ditch by the passing carriage. Hold, the prince called. He jumped from the carriage and approached the old man. He was bent and frail, wearing only a ragged cloak over his mud-spattered clothes. Are you all right? The old man bowed low, recognizing royalty. Well, sire, pardon me for walking in your way. Nonsense, the prince declared. Are you on your way to the festival? Yes, sire. Come inside the carriage and ride with us, then. The prince assisted the old man into the carriage, and Davin handed him a warm lap blanket to put around his shoulders. You are very kind, sires. The old man nodded to them both in thanks. The prince was proud of Davin for being kind, and he knew that Davin approved of his decision to allow the old man to ride with them, when many would not. It was why he had fallen in love with the other man in the first place. At the festival, they invited the old man to eat at their table, and they made sure he had the largest portion of meat, vegetables, and wine. As the night wore on, the crowds grew merrier, and the prince felt loved and whole among his people. He and Davin danced slow in the light of the bonfire as the bard sang a love song. They paused when the old man approached. He held out a package wrapped in paper. "This is for you, sires, a gift for your wedding, and thanks for your kindness this night." They thanked the old man and unwrapped the paper to find a fine pastry. The prince broke it in half and gave half to Davin. "This cake was my mother's recipe," the old man told them. "For every bite, good fortune and happiness will follow you for a decade." Together, the prince and Davin each had 5 bites of the pastry. They thanked the old man, and he disappeared into the firelight. "Do you think we have 50 good years ahead?" Davin whispered to his prince. "And many more." 50 years later, the kingdom of Popswitch had grown into the most prosperous land in the region. Davin and his prince ruled with fair kindness and were beloved by their people. They adopted a boy named Arthur to be their heir and changed the name of the land to Camelot. As Arthur grew, they taught him how to be a good ruler, and they died together on the morning of the 51st year of their reign. A cry rose up among the village when the people learned of their deaths, but they quieted when Arthur came to the balcony to address them. In the crowd below, an old man watched with a spark in his eye, a wily grin, and a paper-wrapped package in his pocket. The end. Okay, those were our 4 stories.
So I have a question real quick. We didn't have any, like Isabel didn't submit a story, did she?
I do not believe so.
Okay.
They were, I believe, submitted by the 4 of us. 4 stories, 1 for each of us.
Yeah, this is going to be hard.
Our tones and our voices sound similar because I am the person reading them. So,
right.
Sound similar because I read them. So let's start with the old man and the fairies. Anybody have any ideas?
I want to say Elle.
Why would you think Elle wrote that?
So at first I said Electra, but the tone of voice reminds me kind of oh my god, the something prince, the wolf prince.
Stealing the Wolf Prince.
Thank you. Hey, I read, like I said, 5 books a week. Forgive me, please. So it kind of reminds me of that a little bit. So that's why I say, but that's just me. Any other ideas?
The unicorn one is throwing me off because immediately, as soon as I heard that, I thought Elle, because I was like, I know that's her favorite thing in the whole world.
What?
How can if you say unicorn immediately, Elle pops to mind.
Exactly. But I'm just wondering if that was kind of thrown in there as a kind of throw us off. So I'm wondering if the fairy couple is Elle too, because I'm thinking
Okay.
Amy probably put unicorns in hers so that way she could throw us off a little bit.
Okay, so let's go to the unicorn story. All right, let's talk about the unicorn story. Elle, who do you think wrote the unicorn story?
I'm going to go with Paulina.
You can go with Paulina?
Final answer.
I
know Electra thinks I did it, so...
Yeah, I'm pretty sure
Okay.
Amy did that one.
Who did the Camelot story?
I'm thinking Paulina.
I was going to say Electra.
I want to say Electra because the reverse role is Amy straight up. Like, that's how I know 3 has to be Amy because she always reverses the roles. And as soon as I heard the gods were like the female gods were males, I was like, yeah.
Aphrodite is a guy, not a chick.
Yes. As soon as that happened, I was like, Amy.
Except I'd make sure everybody called him Dick.
Yes, but you were still I don't know.
Well, then there's the last one, which was male. That could be Amy or it could be Paulina.
See, I know that you won't write Mel, so automatically you were out of that one. That's why I put Electra.
Okay. So do you want me to reveal who wrote each story?
Well,
okay. So we'll do the big reveal. So the fairies and the old man was Elle. Ding, ding, ding. 10 points. Y'all got that one right. She
We
has
knew
a
it.
certain tone. Yep, you're right. So
Sarcastic? Is that my tone?
didn't come
No.
through. The old man seemed to, I mean, if he'd have poisoned the fairies, then maybe. Stop messing around in my garden, you bastards!
Well, I didn't pull those cards.
But
So-
your fallback Elle is fairies.
No,
Yes.
it's not.
Ah!
Maybe elves, but not fairies. Not the little flying
Fairy.
flying thing.
Fairies, elves. Sorry,
Whatever.
Elle.
Unicorn.
So the unicorns was Paulina.
Oh!
Okay.
Sneaky Paulina. But I tell you, I immediately, even though I didn't look when I opened it up, when she said Priscilla, I immediately thought
Oh.
and Aphrodite was Electra.
Seriously?
Aphrodite was Electra. Yep.
What?
Surprise!
So what is
I think you
What
guys
is
are lying.
No. No. I left the cliffhanger for a reason.
Because you're going to finish the story.
I am.
God! I can't believe I was wrong on that one.
So that means that Amy wrote the male princes.
Correct.
The
Camelot
princess.
was me. Yep.
Wow.
Even though if you look at my notes, I couldn't figure it out. I can't believe this. Whatever.
It's interesting though how every person took the same 3 cards and the stories are all completely different. All different kinds of fantasy romance. You have fairies, you have mythological romance, you have historically based fantasy like, Arthur and Merlin and that kind of thing. And then you have the deep down really sad, lonely romance from Paulina. She was never heard from again because the old man ate her or something. I don't know, but
You don't know what the old man did. But is he really an old man? Because remember, his voice was strong.
right. So maybe she went to live on Olympus with the gods disguised as an old man. I don't know.
Never know. But I didn't have. I had to stop, or I would have hit 1,000 words, and I was like, "Fuck."
It's difficult once you get started to make it make sense and wrap up in a decent amount of time. I do agree with that.
I cut a lot out. I had a lot more sarcasm on Aphrodite's part that I had cut. I got to get it close to 500.
You're
not
gonna
800.
You're gonna write this story, aren't you?
I am. I had so much fun with this in particular character that I just was I literally, as I was writing it, I totally could see what little quest Hera has him go on and how he constantly just, screws everything up because I was because some of the things that I had cut out was when she's hand the guy 2 drinks next time. He was like, "Oh, I am not Dios, the god of wine. No, I will not do that," type thing. So, it was kind of I don't know, I had lots of fun with it, and I already see what quest he has to go on. So
I could tell when she was reading it. I could tell that's gonna extend out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Right. It seemed like the prologue to a larger story.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Unfortunately, yes.
So did everybody eat the strawberries and then have an orgy? Is that what happened?
No. They were
Or they just died or disappeared or that their clothing was strewn everywhere, but I'm like, where are they? Are they naked? Are they disappeared? Are they...
Oh.
Yeah, I don't know. I just was like, ooh, what? Let's get to Hera because I really liked her little character.
Yeah, she
but
was always tricksy.
Yes. So I love that about her. Actually, to be honest with you, I actually had Hera as Herod, in kind of another reverse role type thing. But then I was like, oh no, that wouldn't work. But
I swear, though, the reverse. Oh, I thought it was gonna be Amy.
I do like to gender swap.
Mm-hmm.
Well, y'all will know if I blow something up, it's me.
Yeah. Or if your main character rides in on a sparkling unicorn with like rainbows shooting out its butt. We'll be like, that's Elle.
But I didn't write the unicorn story.
Fairies.
Or fairies or elves. Elle likes fairies and elves. Yeah.
She does. She does because I know.
Sparkly, colorful things.
Yes. Well,
you do realize now she's gonna write a dark romance because of us.
No, I don't think I can do that.
Evil fairies and evil unicorns, like that goth unicorn cake that you shared. That is awesome.
A black cake with silver horn and purple mane. Yeah, it's pretty.
This was kind of fun, guys.
This was actually one of my favorite things we've done so far.
Yeah. If you'd like, we can commit to one more of these because I kind of drew 3 more cards.
I say yes, let's do it.
Okay. So the next time we do this, I'm not really sure when we're going to schedule this podcast. We're going to have a monster, treasure, and the third card is so the king agreed to spare his life.
Monster, treasure, and the king spared his life.
King. So the king. Yeah, I'll post this in our podcast group, and then we can try this again. Yep, you got it in the notes. So, listeners, I hope you enjoyed our little foray into flash fiction. I thought it would be a good idea for us to do this because it's a challenge to write a 500-word story and get all of these elements. And I thought it was fun because all of our stories are totally different. Right. But that does conclude the podcast for today, unless someone has anything else they wanted to add.
Nope.
No? Okay. So if you like the podcast, please like, comment, and share. Especially give us feedback on this type of episode. This has been episode number 64. Have a nice night.
Good night.
Night.